Hilchos Shegagos Perek Shvi, the laws of inadvertent transgressions, sacrifices for inadvertent transgressions, chapter 7. Today we're going to start off talking about avodah zarah, about idol worship, mistakes of idol worship, and mostly though, after that, we're going to be dealing with Shabbos, inadvertent transgressions related to Shabbos. So the first thing is idol worship. Says the Rambam, as we know, there's 4 primary ways to serve an idol. That applies across the board, no matter what kind of an idol it is. According to the Torah, if you do one of 4 things, if you bow to the idol, if you pour wine to the idol, if you slaughter something to the idol, if you offer something to an idol, those are the 4 primary services that are always called avodah zarah, that's always called idol worship. Then you have specifics. Certain idols that their way of service was in a specific way. There was an idol called Markulis, where they used to throw stones at it. That was the way to serve it.
Markulis is the name
of an idol.
Statue?
Yeah, of a statue. Peor, we see in the Torah, they used to defecate. They used to go to the bathroom to Peor. That was the way of serving it. Those are more like specific types of idol worship. But then you have the general or generic services. So the Rambam says like this: Hamishtachav avodah zarah. If somebody bows to an idol, v'nisech v'kiter v'zibach, and he also pours some wine, and he also offers, and he also slaughters, behelem echad, all in one lapse of awareness. So he does all 4 major ways of serving an idol in one forgetful state. He forgot it's forbidden to serve idols, let's say, and he does all 4. Chayav arba chatois. So here you're liable when you realize you're liable 4 times. 4 separate sin offerings for the 4 separate sins which you did. B'chein, so too, if you did specific things. Im pier atzmai li peor. If a person bared himself, he went to the bathroom in front of Peor. V'zarak even lemarkulis, or he threw a stone to the idol called Markulis, behelem echad, and he did both these acts under one lapse of awareness. Chayav shtayim, you're liable twice. Again, 2 different acts, 2 different idols, 2 different sin offerings. Same thing, in all similar situations, you're going to be held liable separately for every act of service which you did. But Medvarim Amurim, says the Rambam, when do we say that we divide the services? B'shehezid ba'avodah zarah, v'shagag ba'avodas elu. This is very important. He was purposeful about idol worship. He was just unaware about these services. That means you knew there's a concept of idol worship. You knew that it's forbidden to serve idols. You just didn't know that this is idol worship. Avol im hazid ba'avodas elu, v'shagag ba'avodah zarah. But if you were purposeful about these services, that means you knew it's forbidden to bow to an idol. You knew it's forbidden to offer something to an idol. You just didn't know this is an idol. That was the problem. So then, you're only liable once. Because the problem was that you forgot about the concept of idol worship in general, not about the specifics. As the Rambam immediately delineates. He says, Ketzat. What's an example of this? Yada shazu avodah zarah v'sha'asur la'avda. He's in front of a statue. He knows this is an idol. He knows it's forbidden to serve idols. That's called hazid ba'avodah zarah. Avolo yada shahayishtachavoya v'hanisuch aveira, or avodah. He didn't know that this act is called service. I didn't know bowing is a problem. I didn't know pouring wine is a service. V'yishtachava v'nisech, and he bows and he pours wine, chayav shtayim. So here he's liable twice. Because, again, the problem was in the service, not in the general idol worship. Yoda she'elu avodasein, v'asur la'avod b'hem le'el acher. On the flip side, though, if he knew that bowing and pouring wine, he knew these are services, and they're forbidden to be done to an idol, v'lo yada shazu avodah zarah. He just didn't realize that this is an idol. How could you not realize it's an idol? It's a statue. So the Rambam explains, L'fi shalei hoysa shal kesef v'zav. Let's say the idol, the statue, wasn't made out of silver or gold. It was stone. The ola al daitoi, and this Jew, he thinks, she'ein kruin avodah zarah ela shal kesef v'zav. He thinks that idol means gold or silver. It's not gold or silver, so I can do whatever I want. V'avda b'chala avodas, and he served it with all the types of services. Ein chayav ela chatas achas. He's only liable once. Because here again, the problem wasn't the specific service. The problem was the general attitude to this statue, that this is an idol. He didn't know that. And therefore, what is he finding out? One thing, that this is an idol. So since what he forgot and what he found out is only one thing, he's only held liable once in terms of sin offerings. Okay, that's it for idol worship. Now, halacha base. We're moving on to Shabbos. It says that Rambam klal gadol amru b'Shabbos. The sages said a great rule when it comes to Shabbos. They divided forgetfulness on Shabbos into three categories. A person who has no idea what Shabbos is, a person who knows what Shabbos is, he doesn't know that today is Shabbos, and a person that knows that today is Shabbos, he just doesn't know the specifics of what's forbidden. And in each case, there's a different law when it comes to the sin offerings. How many does he have to bring when he finds out? And the Rambam writes as follows. Kol ha-shecheach ikar Shabbos. Anybody who forgets the fundamental, the mainstay of Shabbos. V'shachach shenitztavu Yisrael ala Shabbos. And he forgets that Jews were commanded about Shabbos. Oy shenishba v'hu katan lebein ha'ivdei kechavim. Or he was captured when he was a child among the idol-worshipping Gentiles, and he never knew what Shabbos is. Oy nisgayer katan v'hu bein ha'ivdei kechavim. Or he became a convert while a child, but he was still among the goyim, and he didn't find that out. Even if he ends up doing many acts of labor over many Shabbosos, many days of Shabbos, when he finds out and he learns about Shabbos, he's only going to be held liable once. Because everything is one inadvertence, that he didn't know about the existence of Shabbos. And even though it's not related to Shabbos, the Rambam also adds, if he ate a bunch of forbidden fat, he'd be liable for only one sin offering. The chatas achas al kol dam she'achal, and one sin offering for all the blood which he ate. V'chein kol kayetze bazeh ba'avodos, or it should say here ba'averos elu. Same thing for all similar sins. It's one sin offering per sin, because the forgetfulness was about the general sin, not about the specific acts. And that's all under the first category of shachach ikar Shabbos. Then category number 2, v'chol hayodeya ikar Shabbos. You have a person who knows what Shabbos is. Avol shachach shehayoim Shabbos. He forgets that today is Shabbos. He's thinking it's Tuesday. The dima shehu choil, and he thinks it's a weekday. So then, afal pisha asa by malachis harbe, even though he ends up doing many labors, chayav chatas achas al hayoim kulay. You're only going to be liable once for the day. But once for the day means that if it happens again, the chen chatas al kol Shabbos v'Shabbos sheshagad boy. You'll be liable to a new sin offering every time that happens again.
Happened to me.
You forgot that it's Shabbos.
No, we didn't know. It's Yom Shishi or Yom Shabbat. Yom Kippur War. We were in Yom Kippur.
Wow.
It's Yom Shishi or Yom Shabbat.
He lost track of the calendar dates.
Yeah.
And that happens.
Yeah.
So what do you do when you recover? When you recover, it's one sin offering for the day. But let's say it happens 2 weeks in a row or 3 weeks in a row. You have to bring 3 sin offerings. Because your problem wasn't that you forgot what Shabbos is generally. Your problem was that you forgot that today is Shabbos. So every time you forget the day, you have to recover it by making one sin offering for the day. Let's go even further. Category 3, halacha gimel. Chol hayodeya shehayoim Shabbos. He knows what Shabbos is. He knows today is Shabbos. Just what? V'shagag b'malachos. His mistake was about the labors. V'lo yada shemalachos elu asurais. He didn't know that these labors are forbidden. Or he knew that they're forbidden. He just didn't know that they're liable to excision. And he does many labors. Here you're liable to every primary form of labor. There are 39 primary forms of labor. As we saw in the laws of Shabbos, there's many what's called av malachis and tuldas. You have fathers and children. Fathers mean primary ones, the ones they did in the Mishkan, and then tuldas are the ones that resemble them and are also forbidden. But tuldas go into the same category as the av. Derivatives, that's the word. That's exactly the word. So if you ended up doing an av and a bunch of its offspring, a bunch of its derivatives, you're only liable once because it's one category. So when you discover what you did, you check all the primary categories which you did, and those are the ones you have to bring a sin offering for. Even if you did all 39, Torah always calls it 40 minus 1. If you did all 40 minus 1 in one lapse of awareness, maybe shloishim v'teisha chatois, you have to bring 39 sin offerings. Halacha dalid, shachach shehayom Shabbos, v'shogag af b'malachos. What if you had two mistakes? It's possible to have these two mistakes together. You forgot that today is Shabbos, but you also forgot that it's forbidden to do these labors on Shabbos. Understand? There's two things that he forgot. Because in the other case, in regular category 2 says, if you would ask him, hey, are you allowed to harvest on Shabbos? He would say, absolutely not. Just today is Tuesday. That's his mistake. But what if it's both mistakes? He thinks today is Tuesday, but he also thinks that what he's doing, even if it was Shabbos, wouldn't be forbidden. So he says, in this scenario, only liable once. Because even though the argument could be made that you also forgot the specifics, but the bigger mistake is that you forgot that today is Shabbos. That mistake overrides the smaller mistakes. And so you're liable only once. Halacha hey ha'oisa av v'toldoisav behelem echad. A person does a primary act of labor and its derivatives under one lapse of awareness. Ein nechayev alachatas achas. You're only liable one sin offering. Ve'ein sarich leimar ha'oisa tuldas harbe shal av echad. Needless to say, if you just do the derivatives, a bunch of derivatives of one primary act of labor, but you don't actually do the primary act of labor, you're only liable one sin offering because they're all in one category. What about halacha vav? Asa tulda shel avzeh, v'tulda shel avzeh behelem echad. What if you did derivatives of two different primary acts of labor? You have an av here and an av here, tulda here, and you did just these tuldas. Yeroeh says the Rambam, it seems to me shehu chayav shtei chatois, that you're liable to two sin offerings because two tuldas are like two avs. And the commentaries debate this Rambam tremendously because the Rambam only says Yeroeh li, it seems to me, when there's no source in the Talmud. This is clear in the Talmud, seemingly. Unless some commentaries say that the Rambam didn't have the text that we have. He had a bit of a different text, that's why it was his own novelty. But there are many, many other detailed answers about this, why the Rambam has to come onto a chidush that two tuldas are liable to two chatois. Nevertheless, that's the ruling. Halacha zayin, asam melaches harbe me'ein melacha achas. What if you did multiple labors that all resemble one labor? This is not a tulda, not a derivative. All of these go into the category of the av. They're all different variations of the primary act of labor. Kigoin, the classic example that Rambam always gives for this, shezara v'hivrich v'hirkiv behelem echad. You planted seeds, you layered a tree. Layering is taking a branch and regrowing it, or you grafted. You attached one branch to another. These are all considered the primary labor of planting, because they're all enhancing the growth of a plant. So you did all these three things behelem echad in one lapse of awareness. Ein nechayav alachatas achas. You're only liable one sin offering. Ukvar nisbar b'Hilchos Shabbos, says the Rambam, I already explained to you in the laws of Shabbos, ha'aves, v'hatuldas, the ha'malachis shehin me'ein aves, what are the primary labors, what are the derivatives, and what are the works, the labors that are resembling the primary acts of labor. So we're not going to get into it. Just going to let you know the general rule, how it applies to sin offerings. Halacha ches, asa malachis harbe, me'ein malacha achas, b'shabbosis harbe. What if you did all these three things, but you did it again and again on multiple Shabboses? So a bunch of labors resembling one throughout different Shabboses. Bein bizdoin Shabbos v'shigagas malachis, bein b'shigagas Shabbos uzdoin malachis. It doesn't matter if you did it and you were purposeful about Shabbos, meaning you knew today is Shabbos, you just didn't know that this is forbidden work, or you forgot that today is Shabbos, even if you knew that this work is forbidden on Shabbos. Chayav al kol malacha u'malacha. You're going to be liable, take a look at all the Shabboses, and liable once per type of labor.
Oh, not per
Ketzad, yes. What does this look like practically? Yada shehayom Shabbos. You knew today is Shabbos, that's called Zdoin Shabbos, you're purposeful about Shabbos. V'zara bay mipnei shelo yada shazriya malacha. You planted not knowing that planting is work. V'chein b'Shabbos shniya. Second Shabbos also, Yada Shu Shabbos, you knew it's Shabbos. V'notaba, mipnei shelo yada shanetiya asura mishum malacha. You planted a tree now, not a plant. Thinking you didn't know that planting is forbidden on Shabbos. V'chein b'Shabbos shlishis. Hivrich, mipnei shelo yada shavracha malacha. Third Shabbos comes and now you layering. You didn't know that the layering is a work. Chayav al kolachas va'achas, you're liable for each act. Afal pisha hi me'ein malacha achas, even though it's all like one work. Across three Shabboses, you just did three variations of planting. The different Shabbos are like different entities. Same when it comes to women. Multiple women creates multiple sin offerings. Multiple Shabbos automatically creates multiple sin offerings. Halacha tes. Shogag shehayim Shabbos. Here's the flip side. You didn't forget the work. You forgot the whole day. You forgot today is Shabbos. V'zarabai, and you planted. V'hu yedei sha'azriya malacha. If you would have asked him, hey, is planting forbidden on Shabbos? He would say, absolutely, it's forbidden. Just today is Tuesday. V'chein b'Shabbos shniya. Shachach shehu Shabbos. V'natabai v'hu yedei sha'natiyah malacha. Second Shabbos, you forgot it's Shabbos. You planted a tree, knowing that planting a tree is forbidden on Shabbos, just you didn't think today is Shabbos. V'chein b'shlishis, shachach shehu Shabbos, v'hivrich, afal p'shei yedei sha'avracha malacha. Same thing, third Shabbos, you forgot it's Shabbos, you layered a tree, knowing that layering is forbidden, but thinking today is not Shabbos. Again, you're liable for each one. All the days between each Shabbos become like a finding out. And the finding out, becoming aware, divides the obligations. And so each Shabbos now is held liable for itself. Even though, again, if you think about it, the umbrella of forgetfulness was that today is Shabbos. But in between, you obviously knew that today is not Shabbos. So those knowledges divide the Shabboses. Halacha Yud, an interesting case that Rambam quotes it pretty much from the Talmud. Misha kotzar v'tachan ki gregeres. A person harvests and grinds the amount of a fig. That's the general minimum required amount on Shabbos to transgress work. If you harvest the amount of a dried fig, the volume of a dried fig, or you grind the volume of a dried fig, you'd be liable. Now the thing is, over here, what did you do? You did it b'shigigas Shabbos uzdain melachas. You forgot that today is Shabbos, but you knew that what you did would be forbidden were it Shabbos. So you did two acts. Follow this carefully. You did two acts that are forbidden. You knew they would be forbidden if it's Shabbos. In your mind, today is not Shabbos. The law over there would be you're only liable once, because your forgetfulness is the one larger thing that today is Shabbos. Then later in the day, the chazar v'katzar v'tachan kigregris bizdoin Shabbos v'shikigas malachas. Later in the day, you do the same two acts. You harvest and you grind, but this time you were aware that it's Shabbos, but you were unaware that these works are forbidden. Your mind is driving you crazy today. In which case over here, you'd be liable twice. So in the same day, the first time you did two acts, you're liable once. Second time you did two acts, you're liable twice. Technically. Now here's what happened. You found out about this harvesting. The harvesting which you did in a forgetful state about Shabbos, but in an aware state about doing the work. Says the Rambam, ktsira, goyreres ktsira. The harvesting here drags with it the other act of harvesting. Utchina goyreres tchina. And if you find out also about the grinding will drag the other grinding with it, and they'll all be considered in the first category. Uki'ilu asa arbaton b'shigigas Shabbos uzdain melachas. We'll consider it as if you did all four acts under the forgetfulness of Shabbos, but awareness of work. Where you're liable for only one sin offering. You bring this one sin offering, you're atoned for everything. When you find out about the other ones, no need to bring a new sin offering. But if it was the flip side, you found out about this harvesting over here. The one you did when you knew it was Shabbos, you just didn't know that the work is forbidden, so now this stands in isolation and requires its own sin offering. If you did bring a sin offering for it, you could atone with that on this harvesting which you found out. We can even drag with it, we can even drag with it these two over here. The harvesting and the grinding which you did under the unawareness of Shabbos, but the awareness of work, because those could be considered like one act of labor. And we can drag the harvesting and the grinding with the harvesting. But this one here, this grinding over here, this grinding remains alone, because it was in a separate unawareness. You didn't know that grinding is forbidden on Shabbos. And when you find out about that, you'll bring a second sin offering. Now, this is all if each act is considered significant. Each act was a full gregeres, a full dried fig volume. Kotzar kechatzi gregeres. B'shigigas Shabbos osdein malaches. Let's say you only cut half of the volume of the dried fig in this state, unaware of Shabbos, aware of the work. The chazar v'kotzar kechatzi gregeres. Bizdoin Shabbos v'shigigas malaches. Then you cut a second half of the fig's volume, but this time you were aware about Shabbos and you were unaware about the specific work. Harei elu mitzdarfen. These two halves do combine. Ktsira gereres ktsira, because the principle of harvesting, dragging, harvesting, it's all one act. They all combine. Same applies in all similar situations and all other labors. A person wants to cut something which is already detached. That's in his mind. He sees a piece of grass or a flower on the floor. In his mind, it's already detached. He wants to cut it further. He ends up with this knife cutting something which was attached to the ground. Even though he had in mind to cut either way, since his thought wasn't done, he cut something he didn't have in mind to cut. He's exempt from a sin offering. That's called acting casually. Torah only forbids purposeful, intentional work, as we explained many times. Yud Beis, somebody is stoking coals on Shabbos, which by virtue of the act, what you're doing is, you're going to be extinguishing the upper ones, but lighting up the lower ones that are closer to where the embers are. So you're doing two acts of labor simultaneously. If you had in mind to both extinguish and to light, but you did it inadvertently, you're liable to sin offerings. But if you stoked the coals to get warm, that was your intention, and it happens to be they got lit up further, you're also liable to two sin offerings, even though that wasn't your intention. Labor which is done, but you don't need the goal. You don't need that goal, right? The coals heated up, but you didn't need that. You wanted the warmth. You're still chayav for it. You're still liable for it. As we explained in the laws of Shabbos. Same way, for the purposeful act, you're liable to excision, so too you'd be liable for the mistake, inadvertence, you'd be liable to a sin offering. And therefore you're liable twice in this case.